now we move to the panel discussion. Just as a reminder, we've received some questions in the Q&A tool already. We might bring them up. I think they have been answered, but we might bring them up again because there are some really good ones. But please, everyone, enter your questions. And now it's also time to unmute or ask for unmuting, being unmuted, so you can join the discussion and actually ask your question talking to us. The webinar is recorded, but that shouldn't hinder you from taking the stage. Yeah, and I think the first question I would just like to ask all of you, what would you recommend newcomers to sustainability, and how could they start working towards sustainability? And maybe Patrick, you can start in summarizing your takeaways, some of the things that were also new for you in today's presentations, that you would like to connect with your work or robotics or an AI community as well.
All right, well, thank you for starting with me. I think the two other speakers will have a lot to say. So I learned a lot from what they said. So the R strategies for Katrine, I think, was fantastic. You could go into that straight away and see how you could map that onto your own work. Only you know your own work, but to take a framework like that and just go through and think, where are you yourself? Where are some of your key customers? I thought that was great. And I really like what Simon was saying about the transparency as well. That for me is a hugely important thing. So we have a lot to do about logging what we do and sharing what we do. Sometimes the truth or the current state may not be very pretty, but that transparency and honesty and reaching out to the community and trying to find some questions before we even find some answers. I would look again at those two, the talks from my colleagues here, and see how I could use those directly in my work. And I will do.
Thank you. Simon, Katrine, do you want to comment on that as well? Like when you have a newcomer to AI, what are the low-hanging fruits of how to start?
No, I think Patrick summarized very well. You know your own business the best, so start by looking in that way. And I think zooming out from time to time to really look back at what is the sustainability definition, the three pillars that both Simon and Patrick talked about, making sure you don't only focus on, for example, circular economy, resources only, but really seeing how can you make and contribute on all three aspects. So yeah, that would be my advice.
I would love to add, focusing on only a couple of topics, because sustainability has got such a broad range of topics, of things you could do, that you can really lose your orientation in the end and don't really reach any impact at the end. So if you concentrate on one or two things, and then do them first, and of course do the first, the low-hanging fruits first, and then don't try to discuss too much with people who are not really convinced of the concept, because it takes much more energy to convince them, in order to work on those things which are obvious in the first place, and where you have probably most of your supporters anyway on your side. Yeah.
That touches a little bit on one of Katrine's last slides, also the small steps. So not getting overwhelmed. I think that's something we've also heard from a lot of people, that they are overwhelmed from all the things you could do, you should do. So taking small steps as a start. I think we've had a question that you partly answered already, Simon, before, but that fits quite well. How do you actually report on these things? Are there certain regulations? Can you just publish your work somewhere and then you're reporting on it? And we've also heard from Katrine that Decathlon, they are very good at advertising as well. Probably they also, on the one hand, they can advertise about that, but on the other hand, they also need to deliver something. So is there something with small companies and bigger companies, what do we need to be aware of there?
Who should give you the answer? We don't know. Franzi seems to be frozen.
Yeah, maybe Simon, you can already start with your opinion on this.
Well, as I said, the publicly listed companies in Europe are anyway obliged already to publish their sustainability reports. But medium-sized companies and also non-listed companies will need to follow at the latest in 2026. So originally that was intended to start in 2024. But one important thing is currently the development of the so-called European Sustainability Reporting Standards, ESRS, and they are currently under development. And as soon as these are there, we would have the big advantage that we have a standard to report against, like you report your standardized, financial figures against international standards. Then we would also be able to sort of, report sustainability topics against these standards, and that would make us a little bit more comparable in companies and industries, and that would bring a huge leap forward, I guess, even though this is quite a huge effort and also causes quite lots of costs to the companies as well. Yeah.
And
Yes.
just to continue the question, I think the second part of the question was what technologies are available to measure such kind of consumption. So are you aware of some technologies which are readily available to be used?
Well, most is basically in your bills and invoices, where you spend your money on, you spend your money on energy, and energy basically costs you something, and you pay those bills, and there you have got your system basically, right, in which you track your costs. And if you can manage to align this also, to get not only out of the invoices the amount which you need to pay automatically, but also get out of the invoice the amount that you have consumed in regard to an electricity bill, then you are already halfway through your reporting system. Unfortunately, nowadays, that is my experience so far. It all works still via Excel and Microsoft and databases. But there are certainly also lots of software providers trying to fill in this gap as well. I think in the future, it will be a connection to your accounting, so financial accounting system, and whoever is able to provide that, be it SAP or other, accounting softwares which are broadly used, then they will win the race of automatically compiling all these necessary data, which is also necessary besides financial reporting, doing the sustainability reporting.
So also a bit of a new business idea for participants here, coming from AI.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, there is a question. My internet is a bit unstable, so if I drop out, there's a question in the chat. I think Sharat will check it also. That is more maybe for Katrien and also maybe for Patrick, because it relates also a bit to robotics. So it is the product as a service that you've mentioned. It's a relatively young concept and quite untouched in the field of robotics and AI, even though there is also offerings of a robot as a service, especially robots are quite expensive. So it has been coming up. But the question is, do you think that this product as a service might be a good strategy for responsibly using robots and AI? And robots can work 24/7, but they cost energy, money, and also have an impact on the social aspects. But if product as a service incorporates all the dimensions of sustainability for the operation phase, here we have restrictions, limitations, responsible use, the approach might have a positive impact on the overall sustainability during the operational phase. What are your ideas about that, using robots as a service?
Yeah, it's a long question, so I'm not sure if I answer all of the aspects, but I think robots as a service, it seems a very good fit, because indeed you use a lot of resources for it. They're quite expensive. So how can you make sure that the product that you're building can last as long as possible, can serve as many needs as possible? So yeah, it definitely seems to have a way in there. I don't know for the concerns that were brought up on energy, social aspects. I'm not sure what the balance is in there, but again, once you are developing your business model and seeing in what cases maybe robots as a service could have potential, yeah, make sure that you bring in the different elements of sustainability again, that you don't just focus on that profit aspect of I have something that is beneficial for me, my business only, but again, looking back at what is the impact on the planet, on the people as well, making sure that on all three you gain value. But I would say it seems a very good fit. So I think it is something definitely to look into for robotics. I don't know, Patrick, if you have anything to add on that.
No, I think so as well. I think a couple of concrete examples. So way back, one of the airplane engine manufacturers decided it wanted to sell flight hours rather than a whole engine. That worked well for a while in that industry, and other industries looked at it. And when you buy a car, if you buy a car, most of the time it's sat in the garage or a car parking space. You don't use it. So companies like Uber and Lyft come in and say, well, let's monetize that. Let's make it work harder. There are some consequences of that, but you can manage it better. You can service it better. You can manage the way in which it affects the world. And I think for drones, for robots and drones, that would be the same, similar. I'm working with some colleagues at King's College who are looking at drones for medicines delivery during an emergency, but then the machine is idle most of the time. So looking at finding ways in which you can multi-use a drone, which is used for surveying or a more classic commercial, and then when there's an emergency, you divert them away from surveying the roof, the damaged roof on the building, and send it to helping people who need blood or medicines. So this kind of system thinking about how we use a robot. We don't want to own a robot that sits in the factory and is idle. We want the service it can provide. So I think there's a lot of new thinking possible using this concept.
Yes, there's actually also a common question that's for everyone, and that is connecting actually exactly to what you're saying, Patrick, that do you think it's possible to reuse robots for different purposes? It's not common practice today, but Anna posted the question, says she really thinks that the technology allows it for it today. If we were able to create low-cost general purpose systems to which we could add the hardware, plug and play, and software to download from a repository, that could be achieved. So that's actually somewhat a new idea that I haven't come across a lot. Any one of you has a comment to that or wants to comment further on it? Reusing robots? I don't know if you have examples from non-robotics industry.
I think it's an intriguing concept. I can't think of any examples, but if you've got a few creative people in a room, I'm sure you could. The mobile phone now is a phone and a music player and a film viewer and it's all these things. Robots are harder to build, I think, but we could certainly imagine some of those, and it'd be fantastic.
Well, in one of my previous employers, we had these small devices called heat cost allocators, and we basically leased it to our clients at that time, because main reason was, okay, our client was able to charge further the cost to the tenants, so our client was a landlord, but it gave the company the ability to get all the products back at the end of its lifetime. So after 10 years, you would get it back and collect it at one place and then dismantle it. And if you would have designed a heat cost allocator, which is easy to dismantle and which is built on modular, you could remove the battery, test everything through, if everything is fine, get a new cover on it, get a new battery on it, and give it out in the market again. And it would also last another 10 years. So the platine, which is mostly the most important or most expensive part, it worked a second lifetime, but you could lease it out again and have minimal costs. So it was also a beautiful business case on the same side. So basically quite sustainable, because that dismantling was also done by people with disabilities. So they could have all your, economic, sustainable, social and environmental parts together and have the sweet spot. So that would be an example for actually leasing and making it circular. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Katrien, I have a question for you, a quick one. How can companies measure and report on their circular economy performance and the impact? Do you have any ideas there?
I don't have any, examples in mind of how companies are reporting on it, but it's indeed something I can look into and follow up afterwards. In the Netherlands, it's used and they're experimenting a lot in all of the sectors in it. So I'll have a look as well at if there's any examples from robotics in there. But yeah, in short, it is around reporting broadly as well with on the 3 aspects. So seeing what impact you have, your starting point, how many resources do you use now if you would move to a circular economy, and what does that mean in terms of reusing less resources, what impact do you have on people as well. Maybe you increase a little bit labor force, but maybe you can also support or work with social economy in there as well. So I don't have any fixed ways of how to report on it. But yeah, I'll have a check and we'll follow up separately, Franziska.
Yes, super.
So then to continue on in the same aspect of the circular economy, there is a follow-up. Sorry, Franziska, you were
I was
there was a lag. Yeah.
Yeah.
But please go on.
Yeah,
I just tried.
I hope it works now.
Yes.
Yes. No. Yes. Sharat, just go on.
Please go on. Please go on.
Yeah.
Please go
okay. In some discussions around.
Okay. It seems to be some
Yes.
issue. No problem.
I can take over.
Yeah, please
just
go on.
reading out the question. In some discussions around the SDGs, they have been criticized for being too broad. A more purely environmentally focused set of goals is theoretically possible. Do the panel think they would have any uptake in business? If that was too fast, you can read the question.
I'll have a go on that. So I completely agree that SDGs are too broad. They are really very, very different from sustainability. They are about development,